Welcome back to CMM Live. This is our second segment today on Tuesday, March 20th, and we are really happy to be joined by our good friend Don Catalano. Don's the president and CEO of I Optimized Realty. Don, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
This is really great to have you here.
I'm honored.
I enjoy talking to you. I enjoy that we share negotiating
Yes, sir.
negotiating barbs, because everything is a negotiation, you know.
Yes.
And something else we share, and that I'm really happy to share with the crowd, is your distinguished military service. So people may not know this, but you know that handsome fellow over there that looks like that is a very distinguished Special Forces U.S. Army person. So talk about that a little bit. What led you into the military, and what did you learn from the military?
Well, that's an interesting question. What led me into the military was I wanted a challenge as a young man. It was kind of like joining the French Foreign Legion, but it was the American version, and then I wanted a unit that you know, they didn't ask you to stay. You had to earn it, and so that's why I chose Special Forces. And it was a pivotal time in my life. It really is my alma mater in many ways. It taught me so much about life, which I've taken over to business. It taught me that you know, perfection is mandatory. You know, many times in that environment, as you know, as a military, a Marine,
right?
You know, you have to be perfect, or someone could get hurt. So we've taken that into our business model, in that when our business is finding corporate tenants the best deals on their sites, we have to find every site that there is, every potential opportunity for the client, and we don't stop until we do. And it taught me also to have courage. The training I went through, which was I was in an elite, within the elite, I was on what's called a HALO scuba team. And for your audience, that means HALO is a military acronym for high altitude, low opening parachuting. You see that in a lot of movies nowadays. And you know, we trained to do that day or night. And that taught me that, you know, you can have fear, but you have to push through. You have to overcome it. And you know, you can have fear in business. You can have fear of public speaking. You know, you can have fear of meeting a client. So that translated. And I went through Army Special Forces scuba training, which is very arduous. Just to get in, you have to be a Army Special Forces, at the time it was Marine Force Recon, and or Army Ranger. And of the people, and that's just to get into the school, of the people that went through that school, only about a third make it out the other end. So that was the hardest thing I ever had to do in my life. But it taught me that, you know, you can accomplish things. And that, too, is translated into my business career and the team I have around me.
Yeah, and so I'll tell you that folks who haven't served in the military don't realize, you know, how much of a perspective it gives you.
I know, it's done it for you.
Yeah, and no matter what I've done, everything always goes back to the military training that I've received. You know, in the School of Hard Knocks. That's been
absolutely.
That's been it. That's been everything that's been prepared for me. And you know, the legal business is difficult. The commercial real estate space is much more difficult. I don't
know if it's much more, but
I can imagine that it's tough.
Has its moments.
Yeah,
there's a lot of competition.
There's a lot of combat that goes on in that as well. But you've done an incredibly remarkable you know, job. Your company, I Optimize, is so well regarded, so well respected.
Thank you. High compliments.
And I can just see the quality and everything that you guys do, including your social media posts, which I find very, very informative. There's nobody out there doing as much as you're doing. So talk about it. So I think it was 1995 that you became the CEO. Is that right?
Yes, I started in commercial real estate in 1987, and in 1995 I started my own company, which specializes in what's called tenant representation. So that's corporate tenant representation. And it's not just me, Joe. As you know, as the founder of your company, the most important thing that we can do as CEOs is surround ourselves with hardworking, brilliant people.
Absolutely.
I know you have done that.
I've been lucky enough to do that as well. Yeah.
And I want to give a shout out to my team. They're absolutely excellent. Jason, Rich, Lynette, and Karen. And we're a small team, and I got that from my Special Forces upbringing, so to speak, that small teams can be more powerful than big teams. We can be more maneuverable, quicker, we work harder. So absolutely, that there again, the military reference, I've transitioned that into the civilian sphere. But our business is to focus on saving the corporate tenant money and time. We find that there is no one that we meet, whether it's the director of corporate real estate for a Fortune 50 company or the CFO, where they have enough time. They're all time compressed. So one of the most important things we can do is we can bring about extreme due diligence, because that's what corporate real estate really needs, but we can shorten the amount of time that they have to spend in it. We take on the burden for them. Most people don't realize, but when you think about it, you'll probably come to the conclusion that corporate real estate is typically the third biggest expense for companies. And it's very easy if you have a 30,000-foot lease, even here on Long Island, let's say in Nassau County, for 10 years, that's worth the price of a nice-sized jet. It's probably about a $10 million lease when you do the math. And if you were going to buy a $10 million jet, might you hire a consultant to be on your side, right? Because it's an expensive proposition. What if you now have 20 or 30 corporate leases? It starts to really add up into the hundreds of millions. It could be hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, I would highly recommend to everybody out there, if you're trying to consider making a move, or even renegotiating because your lease
Absolutely.
is coming to an end and it's time
Right.
to exercise the extension or the option, to engage you guys. Talk about that process, right? So talk about your
Thank you.
process. I meet with you. I say, hey, you seem like a good guy. Let's work together. I need space. So just talk about the
Right.
process that you guys go through.
Okay. So first and foremost, you mentioned renegotiation of your renewal of your lease. And a lot of tenants feel, well, that's an easy thing. I just call up my landlord. We go out to lunch. Of course, landlords from their perspective would love nothing more.
Right.
But the reality is, I have found after doing this for 3 decades, we never know what we don't know at the inception of the transaction. Often the tenant will say, well, I just want to stay here. I'm very comfortable. And then we do a fact-finding with them, and we find out, and there's usually more than one person. There's a team of people, key stakeholders. So, take a firm like yourself. There's yourself as the principal, but you have partners, and you have many people that you have to consider. Where do they live? What are the amenities that you need? Amenities are a very important thing right now. Dealing with the millennial workforce, they don't want the stodgy old office setup that was from yesteryear. They want buildings that are amenity rich. They want gyms. They want restaurants in the building or nearby. They want gyms nearby. So all these factors have to be discussed first before you start looking at properties. And then we've actually systematized that, and we've actually developed proprietary software that systematizes that input gathering, and then we compare that to what the market offers, and then we present it back to the client. And so we can take a list of 30 or 40 properties, and without getting the client to, they won't want to tour 30 or 40 properties, we digitize that for them. We go out, we do the research, we take all the photos, we take all the video, and we compare those sites to their needs. We call those key site drivers. We're actually patent pending on that. And we bring that back to the client right in their conference room, or we can do it virtually. They could be anywhere in the world. They can see the sites that meet their objectives, their key site drivers. And just one of those factors is price, because we found that price is only important after you've met the other criteria that the client needs. Once we've done that, we've developed a quick short list, and we're saving the client time, because they're getting the due diligence. They're seeing 30 or 40 sites, but they're seeing it digitally in about an hour.
Yeah.
From the comfort of their own computer.
Yep.
They could be on their laptop in their easy chair, And we can go through this process, and they can adjust. There's little levers there. They can adjust different factors, and they could quickly narrow this down. We've digitized. When you think about real estate, is a non-homogeneous product. It's not like a can of Coca-Cola.
Right.
If you get a can of Coca-Cola, it's the same wherever you go. Every piece of real estate is different, and that's what's hard about finding the right site with real estate. So we take the client's key site drivers, we show them how to collaborate and pull that all in very quickly. Then we compare the market to their key site drivers. We present it back to them. And again, within about an hour, they can cull that list down to maybe 6 or 8 buildings that they want to tour.
Yeah, that's an absolute home run, man. That's
Thank you.
really an absolute home run.
You're an entrepreneur. You're going in many directions. Time is so important, and yet you want to save money.
I'm just thinking back to when we were looking for space in the early days and schlepping around to unknown buildings and wasting time. It was unbelievable. It was so frustrating. So that is such a home run.
Right. As an attorney, you can't afford to waste time.
Can't afford to waste time. We got a lot of things to accomplish. So what is the market like today? What do you see as the market, and how are you handling sort of these transitions that we're having in workforce flexibility and everything else?
Right. Well, 2 questions. So let me talk about the market. It's very interesting. I think the market, we look at the macro first. And right now, with what's happening with the lowering of taxes, we expect a lot of corporate growth. And with corporate growth comes hiring, and you've seen it in the unemployment numbers. They're very low, hiring people. Now, some people can work from home, but for the most part, workforces work in an office or in an industrial building. So what that does is it drives down the vacancy rate, which drives up the prices. Real estate, like many products, it has always been supply and demand driven. So right now, the market is tight and will be tightening in most marketplaces. By the way, we do a national business. So why we are local here, born and raised on Long Island, and certainly know Long Island like the back of our hands, we do business in Houston or Florida, North Carolina, wherever.
Yeah, and you have blue chip clients out there as well. So talk about some of those deals. I was so impressed when we were reviewing the notes and the deals you've done. I was blown away by them. Talk about those.
Well, we've been fortunate. We I guess through a combination of hard work and just being fortunate, we have quality clients that we've worked for: Coca-Cola, Allstate, Northwestern Mutual, Minute Maid. Recently, we just did 2 big deals here on Long Island. We did DealerTrack, which is 233,000 square feet of office in Nassau County, which is the biggest deal on Long Island in the last 20 years, the first being Canon. So right behind Canon, we're the second biggest in 20 years. And we recently wrapped up about 70,000 feet with Festo in a combination of office and industrial deals. And Festo is a great German company, privately held, but multi-billion dollars, billion-dollar company. And they're one of the biggest tenants here in Hauppauge, and we just concluded that. So we go where the clients send us. We may be up in a tertiary market, like we did a deal for Coca-Cola up in Northampton, Massachusetts, or we may be in Nassau County, or we may be working on a deal in Dallas or Houston. So we've done deals for DealerTrack in Dallas. Besides the 233,000 square feet here on Long Island, we did about 130,000 feet for DealerTrack in Dallas. So it's a different business model. Most brokers live and work within about a 15-mile range. We're not so limited. We have our own turbojet plane, which helps us greatly. We can take clients to these tertiary markets or to big cities. We can go visit them very quickly. So if you said to me today, I have a need in some tertiary market up in Toronto, we can be in Toronto in 2 hours.
So talk about how you built it, right? So I'm blown away with how incredibly well you guys do.
Thank you.
The amount of real estate that you guys cover.
Thank you.
You know, so and it's pretty quickly that you've been able to do that. I mean, talk about that. You should be proud. You know.
Thanks. Well, you know, I think it's thinking things through. It may sound corny, but I spend a lot of time thinking, and I think you do too as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
You didn't get to be the fastest growing law firm on Long Island without doing that.
I don't have a turboprop jet, though.
Well, you could.
Yeah.
You could.
Yeah.
We should talk about that afterwards, because you know what? You can expand your business. Tell you a quick funny story. How, you know, it was. I read a lot. I read voraciously. And I read about different companies that have expanded, Walmart being the one that's a household name, Thermo Fisher being another one. I read the biography about the founder of that, and where they took aviation and they greatly expanded their business.
Yeah.
So 25 years ago, I was doing deals here on Long Island for Allstate, working for a great man, Bill Fitzmaurice. He's passed, but I was covering all of Long Island for him, and we bought our first corporate aircraft. And one thing led to another, and then I was doing 6 different states for Allstate. So that aircraft let us expand our reach greatly. So, you know, trying to be innovative, trying to outthink the competition, that's the advantage of being small. Because if I was big, if I was one of the big firms, there's no way you'd have this technology. You'd have to go, they don't do it.
Yeah. It's really interesting too, because, you know, negotiating 101 is if you only have one deal you're working on, you're definitely leaving money on the table. But yet I think that there's probably a resistance because business owners and folks are busy, and they like you said, they just want to renew, they just want to get it off their plate. But talk to our audience about, you know, they come, they call you, they work with you. What kind of results can they expect for you to be able to get for them?
Okay, very good points. Well, let's talk about the first part of your question. So let's take a CFO. A CFO might do a lease renegotiation or look for new space maybe once every 3 or 5 years. Now, who are they competing against? And the CFOs are extremely bright. But who are they competing against? They're competing against very bright landlords and their brokers. And they're in the market 5 to 6 days a week. They're in the market making calls and talking to people 5 days a week, and they're probably thinking about the market 7 days a week. Right. So you take a very sharp person, but they're doing it once every 5 years, and they're going up against someone that has absolute knowledge of the market and every facet of it. And it's not a level playing field. So we come in as their expert. Again, we're tenant reps. So I should explain that a little bit more. We work for the corporate tenant to get them the best terms on the space that they would find best meets their needs. And that's a very important thing. 98% of brokers really work for the landlords. Right. So there's a huge difference between our approach and their approach. And that approach creates tremendous conflicts of interest. Joe, let me ask you, if there was a law firm that tried to represent both sides of a transaction, what would happen to them?
Right, be a problem.
Disbarred or
be a
sanctioned?
Conflict, absolutely.
Conflict of interest.
Yep.
But for some reason, in corporate real estate, that's the common. We find that all a company has to do to vet this out is look at the potential broker's website and see the property listings on that website. If there's property listings, well, then if you try to go to them to be your expert, there's going to be a conflict. So we do not take on any landlord assignments. We only work for the corporate tenant. So, and as part of that, we bring extreme due diligence. We bring absolute transparency. I mentioned that we might show 30 properties to the tenant digitally. We find that our competition might show a handful of properties. And part of that's the conflicts of interest. If they have an exclusive, or maybe someone in their office has the exclusive on some properties in the market that you're looking for, do they really want to develop all the competition for that? You have to ask yourself that. So we, aligned with the corporate tenant, absolutely want to do it. We don't care which landlord gets the deal. We care that our client is getting the best terms, and our client always picks the building. We present the facts, and we bring true transparency. So how do you get a 25 or 30% savings? It's not that complex. It's, as you know, as a professional negotiator, we provide the transparency. The clients can judge for themselves what are the best opportunities, and then we let the landlords compete for the tenant's business. Now, one of our things is we've only worked for credit-worthy tenants. That's key. So, did the landlords mind? No, not really. Very surprisingly so, because they know when we come a-calling, we're bringing somebody credit-worthy. Yep. And so they want to make the deal.
Yep, I just want to interrupt you there because that's your reputation, and that I think is so important for people to understand. People would think that landlords would shy away from wanting to work with you or be like, here he comes, he's going to pick my pocket. But the creditworthiness and the reputation that you have is paramount, I think, to your success there.
Okay. And let me speak to that point. We believe we've seen some quote-unquote tenant reps that want to quote-unquote pick the landlord's pocket. We advise against that. We want to get very favorable terms for our tenant, but we always tell our tenant that the landlord must make a profit. If you drive the deal below reasonable profit, and reasonable profit is really dependent upon the tenant's creditworthiness. So if you're dealing with a Fortune 500 client, a reasonable profit in this market might be a 6 cap or 6% return. And landlords left to their own devices, and we would too. It's quite normal. They'd love to get a 14% return. Right. That's capitalism. We understand that. Our job is to audit the market and let the landlords compete for the business. And the landlords don't know what they're going to go to at the end of the day. We don't know what they're going to go. No one has that crystal ball.
Right.
They have to see what they're up against, and we let them, in a very ethical way. We never tell one landlord what the other landlord is doing and name the building, but we'll say, you're coming in the mix of things, you're coming in very high. You're number one in cost out of 10 possible buildings. And smart landlords understand that and appreciate that. They want, the last thing they also want some transparency. They don't want some person to not tell them what the facts are, and then they lose the deal with a great tenant. So it's amazing. Landlords like when we come because we're professional. Yep. We're always bringing quality tenants, the kind of tenants that I step into their shoes and say, if I were them, I'd want to make this deal, and I'd do it at a 6 cap, and I'd be glad to do it. I'd compete for this business.
Yeah. So how do you get your clients, right? You have this blue chip, clientele. Yeah. How have you done it?
It's just built over the decades. Some word of mouth, some back in the early days, calling on various people. I think we've developed a reputation within the industry, and so we don't try to get everybody's business. Matter of fact, there's certain clients that we don't want. We want very ethical clients. We want clients that again have great credit. So that's very important to us. We're talking about. Let me go back to landlords. We don't want to bring someone to the landlord who's going to be a bad fit for them. We look at it while we're auditing the transaction and we're getting the client the best terms. We look at it as we're making a marriage, because when we're done with that deal, at the end of the day, the landlord and the tenant are now together for 5 to 10 years, and that's why it's important that the landlord make a reasonable profit. And we tell our tenants that. And if a potential client came to us and said, well, we don't care about that landlord making a profit, we would not accept them. We would say, we advise our clients, you want the landlord to make a reasonable profit, we're there to audit what is reasonable.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, having been involved in many lease negotiations in my career, first thing that can muck it up is a bad lawyer involved in the transaction, and a bad broker involved in the transaction.
Both.
It makes for terrible.
A smart ass would can ruin the deal.
Absolutely, and you can tell when they're trying to gouge, when they're just
Yes.
not gonna
Yes.
do it, and I
And
respect that.
landlords, I have a saying, landlords, whether they graduated high school or Harvard, they're very smart people.
Oh, they know how to maximize every penny out of their buildings. Absolutely.
Self-made multimillionaires. So, you're not going to pull the wool over their eyes.
Right.
It's the wrong approach. And to come in as a smartass, they just show the tenant and the tenant's broker the door.
Yep.
That's not the right approach.
So let's talk about innovation, right? 'Cause
Yes,
one
thank
of
you.
the things that I think you do incredibly well, better
you.
than most out there, is use innovation. And I was reading some notes that you're using drones now to show some properties and stuff like that, right?
We were arguably probably one of the first commercial brokers to use drones. And we did that when they first came out probably 4 or 5 years ago. But what's better than drones, because now the drones are ubiquitous, right? What's better than drones is our own corporate aircraft. We could do things with our corporate aircraft that you just can't do with a drone. Like, for instance, most people don't realize this. You can't fly a drone in many places. Right now, you could certainly get fined. You could certainly potentially go to jail. But we can legally, fly over areas. We did this for DealerTrack. The site that we found for them, which is arguably the best site on Long Island, the best I've ever seen or known of, corner of the Long Island Expressway, New Hyde Park Road, and Northern State. I've never seen anything like it. It was a greenfield site. And to show them what a quality site it was, we flew over with our plane. I took a second pilot. I'm a pilot, by the way, so I fly the company plane. And we have very high-end digital cameras. I mean, pro photographer level, 42 megapixel with the best Zeiss glass there is. And we flew over that site, and that was key and pivotal to that deal, because DealerTrack is thinking, hey, I have to compete against the Facebooks of this world. They're in Manhattan. I got to try to recruit programmers. I need a site that's easy to get to from Manhattan, that's easy to get to from Long Island, and it's something that's iconic. So it did very much tie into what was important to them. So by using our own technology, we were able to capture this image. We printed it up for the CFO and the CEO, this big. Now that site, ironically, was near JFK Airport. You could never do that with a drone, but we could legally do that with our own aircraft.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, Don, unfortunately, we're out of time. I could talk to you all day long about this
Likewise.
stuff. Folks, true to our mission in bringing thought leaders from Long Island and across the country here, we were happy to be joined by Don Catalano today of I Optimized Realty. Don, you're a brilliant guy. I believe that any field you would have went into, you would have turned it on its head and found a way to make it incredibly efficient and profitable. So I appreciate you joining us.
Thank you. Thank you
here
so much.
today. And tenants out there, corporate tenants out there, if you are not reaching out to Don and his team at I Optimized Realty, you are leaving money on the table your next lease negotiation. What's the best way to get in touch with you guys?
Well, our phone number is 631-396-0000. That's 4 zeros. Of course, come to our website, I Optimized Realty. We also have a fantastic blog. Come and learn. Just learn. We're posting 3 times, as you've seen,
Yeah,
3
social
times a week.
media is fantastic. So
So
that's great. So Don, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
How do you manage your corporate real estate portfolio? Old school real estate tools like spreadsheets just aren't up to the task. They simply can't keep up the complexity of half a dozen expenses per site, times sometimes hundreds of sites. And real estate markets fluctuate greatly with the economy. So even if you're using lease administration software, it will at best only tell you what you owe, not what you should be paying. So how's a corporation to know if they're paying too much? Local and potentially conflicted brokers? The occasional internet search? It's time for a system that is transparent, efficient, and empowers the corporate real estate team. Introducing the world's first commercial real estate optimization system, Reoptimizer. Reoptimizer is a patent-pending system that actually benchmarks your existing portfolio to current market conditions. See all your sites and expenses in one easy-to-read dashboard that shows expenses from the past, present, and future. Know if you're over or under market on any particular site or on your entire portfolio. Even see if your portfolio is well utilized with site-by-site key performance indicators. Map your employees and customers against existing and potential locations and see which sites work best for you. Save time by focusing your energies on the best alternative sites that meet your criteria with dynamic key site drivers that help you quickly filter your choices. And you can act on this information to make smarter decisions both financially and logistically. Save even more time with Reoptimizer's cloud-based storage that utilizes bank-level security to allow your team to access documents anytime and anywhere on demand. Plus, store an unlimited number of photos, site plans, floor plans, and even video of your existing or alternative sites. You can also receive notifications of upcoming key dates, so you'll never miss an important lease event. Reoptimizer not only organizes your portfolio, it optimizes your portfolio, and it will change the way you see real estate. We not only guarantee it, we give you a 5 times guarantee. Use Reoptimizer and follow our protocol, and we will guarantee 5 times our fee in savings, or your money back. Reoptimizer. Lease for less and avoid the stress. Attend a free webinar for details.